nothing, besides a
Nihilism of
tinge
being
of
an
guilt
elf.
at feeling nothing. It's only when his body finally vanishes beneath the dirt does it finally hit her. I knew a human's lifespan is short. Why did I never think about getting to know him better? Why didn't I appreciate what I had?
What's up, everyone? I hope you're having a blessed day. I've got another banging video for you today, and we're back to one of the best series we cover on this channel, and that being none other than Frieren, Beyond Journey's End. It's been a while since we've done this video, so I thought let's go back to one of the best. And this video is all about Frieren and how it only makes sense once it's too late. This video naturally being about the whole idea of Frieren, of she only realizing her feelings and emotions for Himmel after the journey ends, which obviously reflects our own lives where we only see the value of things, what we have lost, but we don't appreciate things for when we have them in that very moment. Let's check this video out and see what we can learn from Frieren in today's video.
Like many of us, Frieren didn't really care much, wandering through life apathetically with very little that actually interested her beyond her hobby of collecting spells. That carefree joy she saw from those around her seemed inaccessible to her, something that just wasn't for her. She leaves them after a decade of traveling together and feels nothing. It doesn't even really seem like a decision to her. And when one of them dies a decade later, she still feels nothing, besides a tinge of guilt at feeling nothing. It's only when his body finally vanishes beneath the dirt does it finally hit her. I knew a human's lifespan is short. Why did I never think about getting to know him better? Why didn't I appreciate what I had whilst it was still here? Something I think we can all relate to, regardless of whether we've lost someone or not, is looking back and thinking, oh, those were the good old days. Back when I had this and didn't have to worry about that, right? And for a lot of us, that's just simply when we were younger and could play Pokemon all day without worrying about work the following day. But of course, the kicker is, it's almost frustrating when you think about how much you took it for granted, how little you appreciated it. And I'll come back to how I think we can change that in a moment. But at the time, you had no idea how great it was, how much you'd miss even the little annoying things about it. Much like Frieren looking back at Himmel's obsession with his looks, Haita's constant hangovers and Aizen's bluntness. And the same way they likely saw her messiness and inability to wake up, etc. She looks back at her time with Himmel and is filled with regret. However, maybe it was impossible for her to ever feel satisfied that she'd done enough,
one of the longest standing
of how
pains
much
you can feel
she
in your
did get
life.
to know him. And of course, the same applies to us.
Let me just actually pause this here and just kind of talk about that, because it is so true. I feel like people really underestimate the whole idea of, not even the whole idea, but the feeling of regret itself. Compared to other emotions and other feelings, it's so much more different because of how long actually lasts after the initial effect has been done. Like, let's say you are happy in a moment, you laugh in a moment, you laugh, and then you may forget about why you laughed in the next day. All you remember is that you laughed. You don't know what it was about. You don't know what you were saying, but you can remember you laughed. Or let's say the other end, if you like try to talk to a girl and she rejects you, that pain feels instant for a minute, and then it's more like just a memory, like, oh yeah, I got rejected that one time, haha, we move on. In both these situations, whether it's positive or negative, you obviously get an instant feeling, but that feeling obviously passes and it's just a memory at the end of the day. But when it comes to something like regret, you remember it, but you still feel that feeling of like not being good enough, not trying harder, all this doubt, all this possibility of what if come in mind. That's the feeling of regret. It lingers and it lasts. So if you're the kind of person who is, if you're in kind of life where you should really appreciate everything what it is, and you should really try to make the most of everything you do in relationships, in your careers, in your social life, whatever it is. If there's one thing advice I could ever give, is never live a life of regret. Do what's most true to you in that moment.
As well, because we do see throughout the series that despite her frustration about not getting to know him better, it's not as though she doesn't know a thing about this man like she claimed. We see a whole bunch of examples throughout the series, from the specific flowers Himmel mentioned grew up in his hometown, to the fact that Aina liked sour grapes, the more sour the better. So she did pick up some things about them on their journey together. But whilst it is probably fair to say that she doesn't know as much as you'd expect, given how long they all traveled together, certainly not as much as the others seem to know about her, I do also think that it's likely just impossible to ever feel like we appreciated our time with someone enough, or that we got to know them as much as we wished. There'll always be something we didn't appreciate enough,
So
right?
close,
That one instance where we could have spent more
but
time
yet
with them,
so far
and maybe
away.
my opinion will change of this when I get older, especially now I've had this realization I'm talking about. But I think this is mostly unavoidable. You know, we'll never be perfect at this. There'll always be something we wish we did differently. Or in Frieren's case, she was never going to know everything about these guys, right? But what's important, especially to Fern, is that Frieren begins to make an effort to do so. Because as you're probably aware, just thinking to yourself, oh, I should be more appreciative of all of this, only does so much, right? It's not enough to just think that, you know, it takes a
Actions
real
behind the
conscious effort.
words.
And Frieren begins to make this attempt to get to know her and appreciate not just their time together, but everything around them. And it truly is an effort. You know, it's not something that just happens naturally, as is pretty clear with both Frieren and you whenever you look back at the good old days. It really does take a conscious, consistent effort. And Frieren does exactly that, becoming far more proactive about it all. And a prime example of this is in episode 4. It's a scene that I didn't think twice about the first time I saw it. The village she's currently in is famous for its New Year sunrise, being truly picturesque when the sunlight reflects off of the untainted sea. But despite being over 1,000 years old, she'd never seen it. She just doesn't wake early enough to see it, and never cared enough to try doing so. Or at least, not until now. Despite not really being interested,
Making a
she makes
conscious
the
effort to
do so,
change.
to see if it's really true, which is already a very remarkable difference from her, kind of stepping outside her comfort zone as such here, because it's quite a vicious cycle when you fall into this very apathetic state, right? You stop caring that you're so apathetic in the first place, and as such, never do anything that would potentially help you with that. But I'm not really going to go into that in this video. Frieren still sleeps through regardless, but makes it along thanks to Fern dragging her along, only to be extremely underwhelmed, not thinking it was even waking up early for, and initially turning to leave until she sees the look on Fern's face and how much she was enjoying it. Suddenly, she finds herself enjoying it alongside her. And besides the obvious of, oh, a lot of things are more fun with someone else, what's far more significant to me is that she had to look beyond her initial reaction to it. She didn't have to look particularly hard in this case, right? Quite often it'll not be right in front of you like this, but with just a slight shift in her perspective, this otherwise forgettable sunrise became an unforgettable moment for her. And it's far from the last time she does something like this. For instance, picking up a spell which makes grape sour because it was Aizen's favorite food. Again, a far more conscious effort, you know, not just appreciating the moment she gets, but also going out of her way to create that, like learning a spell to polish these statues of her old party, or making these birthday steaks for Stark, right? And I think this is where a lot of us struggle in modern times. You know, there's a part much later on in the series where Seri, the elf known as the Living Grimoire, with knowledge of just about every single spell out there, asks Frieren what her favorite spell is. Her response being one which creates a field of flowers, a spell with no real practical use as such. And so to Seri, it's a pointless, stupid spell. Unlike Frieren and especially her previous master, Flamme, who both see magic as something beautiful, to be admired beyond whatever mere quantifiable results it could bring. Seri, on the other hand, sees magic purely as a tool, something used to benefit its owner and nothing else. So when she previously offered Frieren any spell she desires, she couldn't possibly understand why Frieren wanted to pursue the magic herself instead. There's very clearly this classic dichotomy of journey versus destination here. And I'm not going to spend super long on this, right? But it's important for what I want to say in a moment. I think I was far too much like Aizen and not enough like Himmel in the past. There's a flashback to Himmel's conversation with Aizen about whether they should go straight to find the Demon King or spend time exploring and being sidetracked. And between this and Flam and Frieren's conversations, the series clearly aims to tackle one of the most difficult questions out there. How much should we relax and enjoy ourselves versus chase after something? Now, obviously, working hard and achieving certain things can lead to specific joys that you wouldn't get elsewhere. And I think anyone who's seen my videos before knows I'm absolutely not bashing pursuing what you want in the slightest. But just grinding 24/7 is not the way for most of us. You know, I've had phases like that, right? And it's certainly not for me. Where that ideal balance lies will vary a lot from person to person, and it's not something I'm even going to attempt to tackle here, although I do speak about it a bit in some of my Haikyuu videos. But what I will say is, had it not been for Himmel, had Aizen had his way and they went straight to the Demon King, he would have missed out on the decade-long adventure he treasured above everything else. And the whole point of that
and would they
is that
have
whilst these
been
big
stronger
achievements are
anyways?
undoubtedly great and a huge source of pride, it's the moments not directly tied to any sort of gain or result that are just as, if not more important in the end. the ones which an outsider wouldn't understand, the field of flowers as such. I know I've struggled to allow myself to do things that weren't productive, as such that weren't going to get me something in the end. But if you've been here since my channel's early days, you've probably noticed a shift away from that kind of life as time's gone on. And I think that's something I'm not at all alone in, because whilst Eisen probably had a valid point in their discussion that, the Demon King probably did need dealing with like ASAP, but putting that aside, most of us probably don't need to rush like that. And not only that, but Kimmel ended up helping a lot of people throughout his detours, both directly and indirectly through the people he inspired to act like him. And so a lot of these meaningless moments had a lot more meaning in the end than he'd ever realized. The route that supposedly yielded the fastest best results probably didn't in the real long-term grand scheme of things. And I think some of us find stepping away and spending more time with those important to us really hard, either because of, just outright apathy like I mentioned at the start of the video, or because we struggle to pull ourselves away from being productive all the time. And maybe it will come at the cost of some results, right? For instance, Frieren is referred to as a mage quite weak for her age. But not only is the cost probably not as high as you think, right? And again, haiku video on this, probably my favorite video I've made, but also Frieren is just hardly weak by any means. But more importantly, it's not something people ever really regret doing, but much like Frieren, heavily regret not doing so. Obviously, yeah, there's all sorts of little exceptions and everything, but I can honestly say, from my own experience, that whilst there maybe are some things in the past where I wish I worked harder on them, usually that's just regretting the time I spent scrolling Instagram or whatever, not whatever time I spent with important people. And so as someone who's made all of the mistakes I've mentioned in this video, I really hope it inspires you to not do the same, including with those with a...
You guys know I don't really like pausing too much in the Frieren video because I'm personally learning so much in these videos as well, because the depth in terms of Furious story is so true, and this kind of episode really speaks to me one of things I put the most in life. It's not one of the age-old things of that feeling of regret, what is like so deep in so many of all of us, because it's scary. For being completely honest, it's scary, the idea of changing. We all think oh, you won't be able to make kids, or what if I fail? What will people think of me? And that prevents us from acting. In the other sense, we all think like, oh, I'm not good enough, or am I the kind of person who can achieve this? There's an element of doubt what makes us stop doing things. But at the end of the day, life is about taking risks, and not even risks. It's almost about pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and really trying new things out. The last thing and the worst thing you could do in your life is really look back and think, I didn't try. I didn't try this thing which I really wanted to do, and now I can no longer do it. Or I wanted to speak to that person and potentially be her boyfriend, be in a relationship with them, but now they're in a relationship with somebody else. But it could have easily been you if you only had made that initial approach. Is that job application that you didn't sign in because you didn't think you were qualified, but then somebody else just as qualified as you gets the job. It's you putting yourself out there an opportunity, whether no matter how ridiculous it is, no matter how unlike you getting it, and thinking, oh, it's the odds are against me, there's no chance, it's 1 in 1,000. But at the end of the day, why can't you be at 1,000? Naturally, I'm deviating quite away from Frieren, but it still is along the same thing. Don't let life pass you by like Frieren let it pass you by. Elves having long years of over millennia years old, and obviously 10 years is probably if you convert like a year on us, very forgettable. But treasure the moments you have, those conversations you have, those moments you spend with people, because once they're gone, they'll never come back. You don't know how much time you actually have, so appreciate every time where you have, and make the most of all the time you do have. Do not live a life for regret, but be the kind of person who lives life to the fullest, live life in their own terms, and live a life proud, where they can reflect back and say, yes, I may not have got and achieved everything I wanted, but I can definitely say I tried and achieved everything I wanted. And in the end, that's enough. But that's been the video for today. Thank you for watching. like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll catch you in the next one. Ciao.